We're going to talk about male jealousy and how it affects men, how it affects men showing up in relationships, dating, how it affects your interactions with women in short term or a long term sense. I'm Paul, Apex Mindset. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell. Link is in the description for getting on my email list. I have a hypothesis, or really more of a theory, which is that our jealousy drive as males in the global sexual marketplace is on overdrive. It's being overstimulated. And because of that overstimulation, it causes a lot of maladaptive or bad behaviors amongst men and how we show up and handle women. So I'm going to do a series of videos on this and discuss this. Now, I discussed this at length and before the train wreck with Entrepreneurs in Cars, Rich Cooper, on his channel. We addressed the jealousy issue. It's very important to understand jealousy, both current jealousy as well as retroactive jealousy, which is being concerned about her sexual past, and how we handle these feelings of jealousy as men can really affect how we show up in our relationships and with our interactions with women. And I'll get all into it. Right now, there's a negative connotation with jealousy. It's the assumption that it's beta. It's the assumption that it's based in insecurity. That's a female-centric view of jealousy. That is a way of shaming men into allowing women to have unchecked hypergamy. And it's simply not true. Male jealousy is not based in insecurity. Now, insecurity can follow the jealousy drive. So insecurity can be a reaction to the jealousy drive. And a person could react to this drive in a beta way or an insecure way. So the actual jealousy drive itself is really neither alpha or beta. It's really just a masculine drive that is a protective measure against our paternity. But how we react to that drive is what makes it beta or alpha. And so, yes, men can be insecure, jealous, but it's not because necessarily that insecurity came first, although sometimes that can happen. But generally speaking, the jealousy component is a drive that is designed to protect us from mating with somebody who is not a safe bet for our paternity. In other words, her chances of mating with somebody else and carrying a different baby, her chances of not being a good mother, so on and so forth. These are problems, right? And would be problems for us, especially in our evolutionary past. So we're designed to be disgusted by women with high notch counts, with a bunch of different sexual experiences, with a bunch of different signs that would indicate that they're not going to want to bond with us, be loyal to us, and be a secure choice for having children with. And so that because of that protective nature, that's where jealousy comes from. And I'll put a couple of resources in the description, but Rollo Tomasi on his channel, Rational Male, also did a video recently on mate protecting. And so that's a good one. Actually, I think it's a good one. Actually, I'm not through with the video yet. I only got the beginning of it, but it's on a good track. And I think that his view and my view are pretty complementary on this. So I'll get into it a little bit more because this is actually incredibly important. This is a key to understanding sexual marketplace, to understanding women, and to understanding your reaction and interaction with women. You have to understand the jealousy drive, how it shows up, and how to handle it. This is a major component that is not talked about enough. So we're going to talk about it here. And now most of you guys listening, I'll say all of you guys listening to me right now are affected in some way by male jealousy or your jealousy drive in some way, even if you are saying you're not, it's probably because you're ignoring or doing avoidant behaviors. You're still being affected by it. So this is really a critical topic. And nobody wants to breach it because we really have bought into the assumption that male jealousy is an insecure, weak trait. And so women have effectively shamed men out of wanting to address or admit this, that this is even a thing that exists. And of course, the end result is a bunch of different types of maladaptive behaviors that makes them not show up and be present in their relationships with women or be good at understanding women or their communication with them, and so on and so forth. That leads to a lot of real serious problems that we see out in the sexual marketplace. So we'll first begin with, you have to take the term jealousy, in male jealousy, we have to take it from a neutral stance or have a neutral mindset when we look at jealousy and what that is. Because jealousy, when I say jealousy, I mean concern about her wanting to mate with somebody else, or concern about her past behaviors or other people that have mated with her. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say male jealousy in terms of the sexual marketplace. We have to look at it from a place of neutrality. In other words, we're not going to put any positive or negative connotations on it yet. We're just going to look at it for what it is. When we look at it for what it is, we understand two things about it, especially when we're looking at it through the lens of evolutionary biology. When we look at it through those lenses of neutrality and evolutionary biology, we understand that jealousy served a real purpose for us in our evolution. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, we understand that male jealousy comes from a distinctly different place than female jealousy. Male jealousy comes from, again, the protection of our paternity. So we haven't evolved with paternity tests and the ability to tell from a blood test whether or not the kid is ours or not. Our biggest existential threat as a male, arguably more so than our existential threat of death, is being rendered unable to mate or unable to have our offspring move on to the next generation. Now, that threat could come in the form of not being able to find mating partners, or it could come in the form of not having mating partners that would want to or decide to carry our baby. Oftentimes, the latter would be the case. In other words, female partners, due to strategic pluralism, would often bring in weaker males they don't want to mate. They don't really want to have their babies, but they bring these men in and have transactional sex exchanges with them for provisions and protection and resources. But really, they would want to mate and would, in fact, mate with more of the alpha dominant, better genetic options and have those babies. And then, of course, those babies would be raised by the beta male's resources as if they were his own, without him realizing or knowing that. And he would lose his opportunity for his seed and his genes to move into the next generation. That's basically cuckoldry, and that was a major existential threat and still is a threat to men. That threat is where the jealousy drive comes from. When we see women doing behaviors that would indicate mate switching, or her desire or want to go to another man and mate with him, that infuriates us. It hits a primal drive that makes us want to make that not happen, essentially, right? That's where that innate, internal, primal feeling of jealousy comes from. Now, retroactive jealousy is being jealous over past partners. Well, we know that things like sexual promiscuity or her wanting a man of her past over us, for example, those things lead to her not wanting to carry you're a baby, okay, essentially. And those things add to signs of her propensity to cheat and to mate switch and to do things that would mean that you wouldn't have a baby. So having these concerns over her sexual past, that's a strong jealousy drive, strong instinct. Now, women don't have the same jealousy concerns that men do. Because when a woman has a baby, it's not a mystery to her whether or not the baby is hers. It comes out of her body. She knows it's hers. And she is the one who's capable, so she is the one is capable of being deceptive here in terms of paternity or maternity, right? She's the one who's capable of that deceptiveness. Men are not, because we're not able to have a baby out of our bodies and conceal where that came from or who that came from. They are. So they're in the position to be deceptive. Deceptiveness is in female nature. It's part of their survival instinct and drive and part of their mating instinct. And so that is something that's an innate part of them. And an innate part of them of all women, is to cheat and to have babies with somebody else. Okay, that's part of every woman, part of all her DNA. Now that doesn't mean that her value system is going to be as such where she does that, or that if she's happy and she's in a relationship that's with someone that's her sexual best, she's not necessarily going to do that, right? But her animal instinct, part of her instinct, is to be able to do that. Okay. So with that, what do females, though, get jealous about? Because females have a jealousy instinct. But you'll notice that female jealousy comes from insecurity, unlike male ones. A male jealousy is a protective measure. It's a protective instinct because we are so easily deceived, really more until recently, with what the paternity of our child is. Whereas women can't be deceived about that. So for women, it's not a protective thing against whether or not the baby is theirs or not. For women, it's strictly the ability to secure a man for resources and mating, particularly. And so if she believes and is confident in her ability to keep a man for his resources and his mating ability, that level of confidence means she's going to have lower jealousy, right? If she is not as confident in her ability to keep that man for resources or paternity, then her jealousy instinct or drive is going to go up. And so for women, it is directly related to insecurity. Now, sure, to apply it in real time, okay, yes, a guy could be doing things that would make any woman feel insecure. And obviously that's not okay, right? Insecurity is not something that needs to be placed as a judgment for weakness. Other people in a relationship could do things to cause you to feel insecure, and that is not necessarily, oh, you're weak, you have a weakness and that's why this insecurity is showing up. No, this other person's doing things that are calling into question your commitment and your sense of value and that person's sense of loyalty to you. That's not something that's objective, right? It creates an insecurity, but it's not because, oh, you don't think you're good enough. It's because this person's behavior is causing that. So yes, men can do behaviors that might cause a woman to be insecure, but innately, her jealousy drive, though, is directly related to her belief in her ability to keep him for resources and sperm, basically, right? Genetic material for baby making. Okay, so her level of confidence in that or not is directly related to whether or not she's jealous or not. And this is why women are more concerned about the emotional cheat, for example, than the physical one. If a guy, and they've done the studies on this is very common, this is almost common knowledge if you didn't know, but women are more concerned if a guy has a relationship with a woman or has an emotional connection with a woman than she is if he just had a sexual connection and had sex with her or whatever. And the reason why is because that emotional connection would indicate that he would discard her potentially and therefore she would lose resources or lose the potentiality of mating with him for this other person, or that he would spread himself so thin amongst so many other women that there would be less resources for her and her offspring. And so emotional cheating, emotional connections are far more threatening to a woman, whereas sexual cheating is not. And in fact, a lot of women are actually turned on by their man having sex with another woman in the right context. That's another truth that a lot of people don't understand or recognize, but and that has to do with our polygamist harem style past that happened after our polyamorous tribes. But even in the polyamorous tribes, most of those tribes were patriarchal, male driven, and the most powerful males were deciding who is mating with who for the most part, and that's why a powerful male mating with multiple females is often a turn on. This is why when a man has a sexual past or a history, it doesn't usually bother a woman, even if she says it bothers her because of some of her insecurity. Again, back to that jealousy drive, there's a part of her that sees him as sexually more marketable. So a guy who's been able to get women in the past and have sex with women in the past or in the current is seen as more sexually marketable. And because women are solipsistic, in other words, they can't see past their own perspective, women have a real hard time understanding that most men are disgusted by her sexual past. Most men are disgusted by a woman who's had a ton of sexual partners. That doesn't make her more valuable or increase her value. Women don't understand that it takes zero talent to have sex with somebody. Whereas for a man, we have to do it's a fair amount of work. Even if we're the hot top 10% alpha dude, we still have to do stuff to get laid. Like, it doesn't just fall in our laps. But where women are constantly inundated with sexual attention, women are generally these sexual selectors, right? And so women just don't understand that, though. They're always surprised. You throw a woman on Tinder or something and have her put up a male profile or something like that, and they are unbelievably surprised by the lack of attention they get if they're having a male profile by the other females. They don't know what it's like to be a man. They don't know what it's like to be in a position of having to actually put in effort and work to get laid, because women don't have to put any effort or work into it. Therefore, it takes zero talent for a woman to get laid. It doesn't mean she's valuable. And in fact, the more her notches go out, the less valuable she is perceived by men. And this is due to this instinctual jealousy drive. And it's there to protect us. It's there to protect us from getting with a woman who would cheat on us, getting with a woman who would be unhappy because she's just not able to pair bond, getting with a woman with a lot of baggage and dysfunction because of all the relationships and men that she has gone through, and so on and so forth. Getting with a woman with low set of values and not a lot of loyalty because she's been practicing mate switching and promiscuous behavior. These are all very unattractive things to a man, especially a dominant man with a lot of things to offer. A lot of women, they don't understand this. And so because female jealousy comes from insecurity in a sense, right? Insecurity in her ability to keep that man, women assume that male jealousy comes from the same place. They don't understand that it doesn't. The instinctual drive of jealousy is completely different. And a guy is not rationalizing or reasoning out his jealousy. It just happens. It's an instinct, right? Something happens and it's that internal feeling, and it's usually anger. Okay, it's usually a feeling of wanting to go crush somebody's skull or take somebody and bash them into the ground until you feel better. That's usually the immediate feeling that happens for a male. It's no different than the silverback gorilla pounding his chest and beating the crap out of a competing gorilla from another tribe who's interested in his women. Are we going to sit here and say that silverback gorilla is really a beta male and insecure and he needs counseling, he needs anger management? That silverback gorilla, he really needs to talk about his insecurities because of how jealous he is. Of course not. And that silverback gorilla is doing the most alpha thing he has available to him, which is beating the crap out of other dudes who potentially want to mate with his women. I mean, there's nothing more alpha than that. And that silverback gorilla is protecting his paternity when he does that. Our animal side of us, our instinctual drive, is the same thing. But women don't understand it. So when it shows up in you as a male, when you have jealousy as a male and you display any kind of jealous behaviors, unless it involves smashing a dude directly into the concrete, she will see you as insecure and weak. So that's really important to understand. If you just understand that the jealousy drive is very real, for men particularly, it's not an insecure or beta thing to have a jealousy drive. What it is a male thing. It is a masculine thing to have, and it's an instinctual thing. And every man, whether he's alpha or beta, or somewhere in between, has this jealousy instinct and jealousy drive. It's just part of who we are as human beings. So don't let anyone shame you into thinking or accepting an idea that feelings of jealousy means that you're beta, weak, or insecure. Nothing could be further from the truth. Okay? Jealousy is designed to protect the male, and you could use this to your advantage, men, because it's designed to protect you from low-quality females that are going to destroy your life. Okay? And that's in the current. In the past, it was destroy your life or destroy your ability to have children, right? So it's a protective instinct. It's valuable to some degree. But the third thing is that we need to understand is that jealousy is on overdrive. Your instinct is just like a woman's hypergamous instinct is being overstimulated by social media and our current cultural climate, which gives her the illusion of having nothing but endless sexual options. Well, some of that's not really an illusion. That's really the truth. A lot of women have endless sexual options. It puts her hypergamy on overdrive, makes her never want to settle in, we'll say, with a guy that she perceives as her best and have a deep and fulfilling relationship. She's not interested. She may be interested in that, but her hypergamous drive gets in the way of that every single time, especially for a younger, hot woman who has not reached her epiphany phase yet, where she's approaching 30, basically. Okay? So hypergamous drives are on overdrive. Well, that means our jealousy drives as men are on overdrive, because never in any point in history have women had more sexual access to more different types of sexual opportunities with more different types of men without any social consequences that are negative. That's the important part. Negative social consequences is what prevented women from running out there and racking up notch counts and racking up experiences that would make her unmarriable, we'll say, or not good candidates for long-term relationships. But now there's nothing but opportunity and inundation and support, in fact, and social support for her to do that. So where before it was socially not acceptable to display disloyal and promiscuous behaviors that really cheapened who she was as a woman, nowadays it's promoted as something that she should go do through our gynocentric and feminist values. And so with that means in a relationship with you, she's probably had more sexual experiences than our instincts are really equipped to handle. I mean, think about it. The average girl who's in her mid-20s has had she's had more sexual experiences than people who got married 67 years ago. In fact, her notch count would likely have rendered her unmarriable. She would have been like the town whore that no one wanted to marry 60, 70 years ago. And that's just a normal amount of sexual experiences for the average mid-20-year-old today. So when we consider that, it just stimulates our jealousy drives on overdrive. And then we also want to consider her current stimulus too. So even in the relationship, she has got nothing but sexual opportunity everywhere she goes. And even if she's in a small town or small place where maybe she doesn't have quite so much opportunity, or that's the appearance of it, all she has to do is log on to Instagram. And if she's not getting inundated herself, she is going to see how everyone else is getting inundated. She's going to see the lifestyles of other people and wonder, would that be a lifestyle that I could have? And that's a hypergamous question. And that question may cause her to want to seek those experiences, and it often does. So because of her levels of opportunities and the fact that there are very little social controls on her hypergamy, that really stimulates the hell out of our instinct to want to either mate protect or discard women right away, which is why most of you guys in my comments, your answer, because you know mate protection isn't really the best way, so most of you guys in my comments are going to say discard her, okay, which makes sense, or to just be completely in turmoil in your relationships, and then you're going to have basically maladaptive behaviors that cause you to show up with women in a manner that is just not productive. It's not going to help you have good relationships with women, whether it's casual or whether it's long term. So that's the basics of the jealousy drive. We're going to have to talk about in other videos what to do about it. But for right now, you have to understand that it's a thing. I will conclude, though, with the basics of what to do, because I know you guys are going to be dying over there in the comments, and those of you who watch are like, what am I supposed to do with this? Don't leave me on this cliffhanger. We're going to have to talk about it more, okay? But understand at least this part. So your instincts as a man, when it comes to handling a problem like this, is to get angry and to use violence, coercion, or intimidation to solve that problem. That is what the male instinct would be to solve that problem, particularly the alpha male instinct, okay? We can go back in history and look at what alpha men did to other men that messed around with their wives or girlfriends, okay? And the answer is it's not pretty. All right? And we can look in the animal kingdom and look at what chimpanzees, primates, and gorillas do to other competing males. And it's not pretty, okay? So violence, coercion, intimidation was the means of us solving problems as men. That is our instinctual evolutionary drive. But here, and that's what would be perceived as alpha by a female. She would be terrified, of course, at that reaction, but she would also perceive it as alpha. So at least she wouldn't perceive you as a weak male. But the problem is, of course, is using violence, intimidation, and coercion today, in today's society. Well, there's a lot of controls in place, for good reason, mind you, that men don't use what is instinctual to us. So if we use violence, intimidation, and coercion, we become an abusive partner, right? Which is not good. I don't recommend being an abusive partner. And that could end up to the point, if we beat some dude up or whatever, that could end us up in jail with a criminal record, with felonies. All kinds of problems happen when we execute our male adaptive strategy to jealousy, okay? Which would be to basically use violence or a version of that. So what we end up having left as males is a beta male response. So beta males could not effectively use force, intimidation, and violence to get what they wanted on other men and external sources when that jealousy drive is triggered. So what would beta males do? Well, beta males would get angry, but they would default to maybe trying to control her behavior, trying to mate protect her and control what she's doing, right? Instead of fighting off or fending off other threats. Bargaining with her, okay? Pleading with her, all right? Or how about shaming her or attacking her? These are things that would be considered beta male strategy, would be to turn it on the weaker woman that you could control and try to use controlling tactics on her. Another thing that a beta male might do is just try to pretend it doesn't exist. This is what you see most often today. What you see most often today as the reaction to our jealousy drive is to ignore, to pretend like there isn't a threat. So you see this with jumping onto blue pill philosophy, like, well, I said the magic words and got married, and I know she would never do that to me, and she's a nice girl, and she's one of the good ones. And then a lot of you guys in your emails, well, I have frame, I didn't lose frame, man, I have frame. Like, you're embarrassed. Like, that's the word. Everyone has frame, they tell me, as then they proceed to tell me a story about how they don't have frame. So that's a thing, right? It's that cognitive dissonance, that deflection, that rationalization. These are forms of ignoring and trying to rationalize around the jealousy drive. What that jealousy drive is telling you is that there's a potential problem. And instead of recognizing what that potential problem is, and then weighing out whether it's an actual threat or not, and then deciding how to react to that, that would be confronting it head on. Most men don't confront it at all because you've been brainwashed into thinking that if you have any of these feelings, that means that you're weak. And so women have effectively shamed all of you guys into thinking that it's weak to have any kinds of feelings of jealousy. It's insecure and not alpha if you have a concern about your chick being disloyal. And so that has brought up all of these tactics of finding a way to ignore this problem. Again, deflection. Some people jump onto blue pill philosophy. Some people jump onto red pill philosophy and do it. And they say, oh, but it's not alpha to feel that way. And so I'm going to ignore it and pretend that it doesn't matter because alpha males would have sexual options and therefore it wouldn't matter to that alpha male. Well, there's a degree of truth to that, but the problem is you're ignoring the fact that she's still doing behaviors or may possibly be doing behaviors that are red flags that you need to pay attention to. All right, just because you could go execute your alpha male mating strategy, which is discard her and find another woman, you're clearly not doing it by just staying in a relationship with her and rationalizing that you're alpha. And so that's a way of deflecting too. So we have to understand that these are beta responses because we're not allowed to just bash a dude's head in that was in her sexual past until he's dead and say, see, he's not better than me. All right, get back in your room and get back in the kitchen and make me some food. You see, we can't just do that, right? So now what we're stuck with are these other behaviors. The worst one I'll mention is eroticizing. So there's some that are promoting eroticizing these behaviors. This is eroticizing things like cucking, polyamorous relationships where guys are trying to build attraction triggers into thinking of how erotic it would be with seeing, having her woman get pleasured by another dude in order to try to reverse or overcome the jealousy drive. That's a beta male response because beta males don't have other sexual options. So they have to settle with a woman who doesn't see him as her best and who will only offer him transactional vagina. You see, so these are all weak ass responses that we are being promoted into or cornered into because we can't just beat somebody up into responding to our jealousy drive. That's not good. So the alternative response, I would call it the new alpha default, all right, is this. Now you're going to get angry. It's going to happen when something triggers a jealousy drive. You're going to want to beat somebody in the face until you feel better. That's what's going to happen. That's your chimpanzee. Wanting to do something. Now, because you're a human being, you're going to have, and you're not an abusive partner, and you're not someone who's going to go to jail for beating up an ex or a guy at the bar who's making a pass at your woman and she smiles at him back or something, right? You're not going to be that guy that gets yourself in trouble. right? Or that's a bad person to be around. So you're going to get that chimpanzee under control. That's your first thing. And you're not going to have just a fit of rage response and respond to that, even though internally that might be your reaction. Okay? And so what you're going to do instead is you're going to express your standards through statements of facts and your boundaries. All right, for example, if she wants to go off and do a bridesmaid's party that's going to involve a bunch of drugs and male entertainment and maybe a situation, maybe she's going on vacation with the bride and her bridesmaids to go see if she can get, railed out by a new guy on vacation, or at least one of them might be. You might say, you know what, that single girl stuff, girls in a relationship with me aren't going off on vacation with her girlfriends to see what other guys are available for her to bang. That's just not, even if your friends are doing that, that's just not something that a girl that's going to be with me is going to do in a relationship. Simply stating those things as fact. Now, of course, you've already lost frame if she's asking you that question anyway, and or booking that trip anyway. But that being said, you make statements of fact without showing anger or whatever, without losing control over your emotional state. You just simply state what your boundaries are. That's the most alpha thing you can do. And you come from a standpoint of outcome independence, which is like, you cross my boundaries and you're going to find an empty house when you come back, assuming you guys cohabitate, or you're going to find me dating other women and us not being in a relationship, if that's the boundary you're going to cross. And that's the message you send, all right? You don't give an overt ultimatum or whatever. That's bargaining. That's what beta males do. But what you're going to do is you're going to illustrate your standards and your boundaries of what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept. And that's pretty simple. You demonstrate higher value and abundance. So that's just generally every day, right? You demonstrate higher value just by how you show up in your sexual market value and how you treat her, how you treat women, and not demonstrating or showing mate protecting behaviors, even though that may be what you want to do. Because when you can't go beat somebody up, the next step will be, well, I'm going to control her and mate protect her. And that's coming from these feelings of jealousy. You as an alpha male, because what makes you an alpha male versus a beta male is that you have emotional self-control and outcome independence. So you can go, okay, wait a second, my tendency is to mate protect, but I'm not going to just mate protect. I'm going to set my standards and boundaries, and I'm willing to walk away from her if she breaks that. She can go off, do whatever she wants. You want to go hang out with the girls and talk to, Alejandro and maybe have, and put our relationship in question or whatever. Okay, but then there's going to be consequences to that. So you do what you want, but that doesn't mean you're going to be absolved from the consequences of doing what you want. And that's the standpoint you take as an alpha male, okay? And then, of course, executing dread when she is going along steps of not doing what you want because she's going along the lines of, I'll say, moving in the directions of breaking your standards. Well, now you can just start executing dread, okay, where you start spending a lot less time with her, putting a lot less energy into her, and you start putting energy more out into the world, which brings up the question of, he's able to discard me and he's able to find somebody else. I better value this commitment. Better value the relationship we have and not break this standard that he has. And so that's what you institute through dread. And then, of course, if she's continued to move in that direction of breaking that standard of yours, then you're in the process of exiting that relationship, meaning you're setting yourself up for the exit in a logistical sense, and she'll see that. And in an emotional sense as well, where you start to distance yourself from her emotionally, you're preparing to basically put her shit on the curb or take your crap and leave, whichever it may be, to use that analogy, okay? If she's going to break a standard that you have, that's an absolute standard you're not going to accept her breaking. And then, of course, the actual process of exiting that relationship is there. So that is how an alpha male handles that jealousy drive. And that is rooted into gaining emotional self-control very quickly. Now, I will say in conclusion, gaining emotional self-control and having outcome independence, that is the most alpha thing you can do. Considering you can't just beat the crap out of everybody when you don't get your way anymore, because we're not chimpanzees, this is what your alpha response is emotional self-control and outcome independence, and behaving accordingly to your standards and boundaries. But gaining that emotional self-control and having that outcome independence sounds really cool when I say it on a video. But as some of you guys, most of you guys probably already know, that's very difficult to execute in real life, okay? Not impossible though. The more alpha you can be and the more your internal state is handled, the better you're going to be at responding with emotional self-control and outcome independence. But that does take work. You're not going to be able to squat 600 or 700 pounds the first time you try. Well, you're not always going to have maximum emotional self-control and outcome independence without doing any work towards that either. That's where where things like mindset training, mindset coaching, mental resiliency, things that people book consultations with me for comes in handy. All right, not just to plug my services, but that's the missing piece, okay, of becoming more alpha. It's not just having red-pilled information, it's actioning in the information and doing so in an alpha manner. And that has to do with what's going on up here and getting control over that. All right, so that's a pretty long video. Hopefully that made sense to a lot of you guys. Thanks for the support.